So I raised my hand and my boss, David, said, really, you want to do this? And he signed me that day. He changed me that contract that same day. He's like, yeah, fantastic. I'll teach you everything you need to know. Why don't you come over to Hong Kong and work with me at OMA? He sent me a JPEG of his signature. Here's my signature. Put it on any recommendation letter that you want for your applications. And I had heard about that before, but I didn't think it was true. And I turned around to David, because it's Rem, David, me, and a couple other people in the team. And I'm like, oh, this is legit. This is not a rumor. He does this.
Subscribe to Blessedarch for your dose of art, architecture, and design. And hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Hey yo guys, welcome back to another Blessedarch video. So a few weeks back, I had made a video with Mariana where we discussed Zaha Hadid Architects, about how she got into Zaha Hadid Architects, about her journey there. This week, I get to you the inner workings of OMA through a discussion with Viviano. So again, I connected to Viviano through Instagram, we talked for a bit, and I learned that he has spent 5 years at OMA. He joined the firm as a junior architect and he went all the way up to business manager at the firm. Now in this interview, he tells us everything, how he got to OMA, what is it like inside the firm, everything about it. He tells us about what it is like to work with Rem Koolhaas as well. He also takes us through his decision to ultimately quit OMA to start his own practice and also doing a master's 10 years after he graduated. So all of these things are in this interview, and trust me, I had a lot of fun while doing this interview. There is also some bonus footage where he discusses the exact portfolio that got him into OMA and a lot more discussion. But I will tell you how to access that bonus video at the end of this one. So that will be enough of me chit-chatting. Let's head over to Viviano. So hey Viviano, nice to finally connect with you.
It's great to see you, Rishabh, albeit electronically.
So I've already talked to my audience, I've already told them a little bit about you. So yeah, I want to know your journey and I think it'll be amazing letting people know that journey as well. So let's first start off with your education. So I wanted to start by knowing, first of all, where did you graduate from and when?
So I graduated from Monterrey Tech, which is one of the largest private universities in Mexico. They have like 100 campuses in the whole country. And I did an exchange program with UPC, which is a university in Catalonia in Barcelona. So it's a 1 semester exchange. That was my bachelor. Many years afterwards, I got a master's, but we can get into that at some other point, I think. That's the core of my studies.
One thing that was very peculiar and really stood out while I was going through your whole CV and everything was, you started your education in 2003 and you had already started working from 2005. So you had worked as a draftsman for a whole year in 2005. In 2006, you worked as an architectural assistant. In 2007, you worked as a freelance 3D developer and a junior architect. In 2008, you started to work as a full-fledged architect. So was your course designed, like was it within the education boundaries to get this work experience, or did you go and get it on your own?
No, it wasn't designed that way in the sense that they either allow or ask you to do it that way. They do require 240 hours of professional practice experience, which is just your internships, let's say. But I did way more than that. And actually, no, I think it was two parts. One is the way my parents educated me, that you're not going to be doing kind of nothing in your free time. You have to always kind of use your free time. But also I was very excited to get out there and work. So you mentioned now 2005. Wow. Yeah. 15 years ago, I learned AutoCAD at work before that I learned it in school, which is kind of an insane thing. Because for some reason, the way my program was designed, we would learn Viz, Macro Studio Viz, which is not really used much more today, before we learned CAD, which is kind of insane as if I think about the pedagogy. But so I learned AutoCAD by working at a construction and design firm doing electrical trays in supermarkets, which is like the most boring thing you can think about. But for me, it was super exciting to be in an office environment. I mean, like getting the coffee and going to work for me, like dressing for like the office environment and meeting other architects and figuring out and actually taking up their time, like asking them what they were doing and asking them to help me figure out how to use AutoCAD when they were assuming that I knew how to use AutoCAD. So yeah, I think it was mostly my interest into getting the experience, and I didn't know how valuable it was going to be. I just had this yearning to work.
I think one of my friends had also joined an internship, I think at the end of second year. Although at that time, because we knew a little bit of CAD, she learned a hell lot at the internship, much more than we did at college. But I think one thing she came back with was the first thing they taught her there was how to fold a sheet and fold it in a way that you could still see everything, like all the details that need to be. And I think that was one of the most fascinating things for me is you actually go into job and you learn more practical things, like things you don't even think about, which are really, really practical.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also any studio that is more than 12 people large, you're going to learn about politics as well. If you want to get into a work environment and go up the ranks, you need to deal with human behavior and politics. So you're going to learn about that too.
So you graduated in 2008 from your bachelor's degree, and in 2009 is when you worked at OMA. In between, you had told us you worked at another firm. So I want to know your journey from your graduation till you ended up at OMA.
Yeah, so I think that backstory is kind of interesting and can be very useful for other students, because it's partly, like I said, serendipitous. It's like really parts of good luck. It's making your own luck and then having some good luck along with it. You know, it started with an internship program that I went to Chile, and I worked with this cool young architect. He was 36 at the time, called Felipe Asadi, who is famous in Chile for doing these beautiful houses. And Felipe had just won an award called the Architectural Record Design Vanguard Award, which they would give out once a year. When I came back to Mexico and I was doing the rest of my studies, I wanted to go back again and live abroad in an internship form. Now, this was not strictly allowed. You can only go abroad and work once, and I had already done that. So I have to get like a special permit from my dean. There was a long story that the university owed me a favor, let's say, for like a mess up they had. And so I kind of cashed in my favor to say, hey, I want to go either Japan or Holland to work. And I only need to do 2 more classes, and I want to do them online. Now, this is 2008, so doing a class online was not kind of that accepted. Yeah. So my dean said, okay, we'll help you out. If you get accepted in a studio in Japan or Holland, I'll sign whatever I need to sign so you can go. And immediately I got hired through a Skype interview in Amsterdam by this office called Search Architects, which I applied to because they had won the Design Vanguard together with Felipe. So the Design Vanguard Award in Architectural Record magazine, it was like 6 to 10 offices each year they would select as like at Vanguard kind of office studio level. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that they would see in my CV that I had worked with Felipe, and they would be like, oh, you know, that's that guy. Okay, we'll take it. But then they confessed to me they had no idea. They just saw kind of the portfolio and they're like, yeah, good enough, let's go. And I was the first Mexican to ever work at Search Architects. And that's how I got to Holland. And I had a great experience in Holland. I mean, I remember taking the flight over, and next to me, there was a young couple, well, a couple my age. I was what, 22, 21 at the time, and around there. And they were going backpacking from Mexico to Holland and all of Europe. And I had the Lonely Planet Holland with me, and I was devouring it on the kind of 10-hour flight. And the guys, when we landed, they were like really kind of honeymoony cuddling. They wake up when we land, and they're like, you did not stop reading this book since we take off in Mexico. And I'm like, yeah, I want to know what's the deal with language. I have no idea. You know, I lived in Europe, but in Spain, which is the same as Spanish, so that's fine. But you know, got a bike, get around everywhere on a bicycle, dealing with Dutch weather, dealing with Dutch language, get into Search. All the CAD layering system was in Dutch, so I had to learn, you know, doorsnede and gebouw and these words, which means section and building, and, you know, glass is called a different way. So zwarte is black, and everything was black in the office. And it was a great learning experience. And there, and this is the kind of launching pad into OMA. This is 2008. This is the year I'm graduating. There, one of the 3 partners was David Gianoten. So at that time, the lead partner was Bjarne Mastenbroek, who's still the owner of the office. Uda Visser, who was a German architect, and David Genotin. And he's very young at the time. He's like in his early 30s. And I struck up a great relationship with all of them, but especially with David. And when David, in the meantime, I invited him to give lectures at the student lectures in my campus in Monterrey. So he came to Monterrey, Mexico, my hometown, to lecture, and he met my parents. You know, he had dinner in my house while I was still working over there in Amsterdam. So got along great with him. And he said, don't go back to Mexico, stay. And I'm like, I can't, I have to go do these social service hours things and sign my paperwork to get my diploma. And he said, fine, do that and then come back. So I do that. And then I started my own practice, a very kind of subtle practice thing, a different name, and started doing renovations here and there. And I'm like, you know what? I've got what I think is a good CV and good experience, but the type of clients I'm getting, they're interested in bathroom renovations, and they don't give a damn that I worked in Holland, you know? So I emailed David back and I said, David, I think I just need some years to go by and grow a beard to look older, to get more important projects. I want to do a master's. And he said, Viviano, you have a job with us here whenever you want, but he sent me a JPEG of his signature. Here's my signature, put it on any recommendation letter that you want for your applications. But I want you to know that I'm no longer going to be a partner at Search, because I'm now going to be a partner at OMA with Rem. And I went like, what? And he said, why don't you come over to Hong Kong and work with me at OMA? And I was like, yeah, my jaw dropped. But still, being the very sort of counterintuitive architect, I said, well, David, I can't answer right now because I have my booked flight to New York and to Boston to go see the GSD and see Harvard. And I can tell you in a couple of weeks. So of course my answer was yes, but I needed to go check out the masters. And so at Columbia and at Harvard, I spoke with a lot of people, and they said, 2008, middle of the global financial crisis, they said, Viviano, university is going to be here always. If you have a job with OMA in Hong Kong, go for it. So I did. And then I went into the application process with OMA and the interview process with OMA. You know, I was sort of grandfathered in by David, but I need to be accepted by the rest of the partners and the directors and blah, blah, blah. And I had started teaching in Monterrey, Mexico at the time. And end of 2009, September, I flew on the 11th of September of 2009. I got to Hong Kong, to OMA.
That is one hell of a story, like landing up there. And that truly, I mean, obviously you had your hard work and you had every skill that you put in. That's an amazing story how you ended up there.
So just an advice to people who are doing their internships: get to know and strike a relationship with the partners and with the directors. Yeah. When you see a person that is knowledgeable and respected, just stick to them like, what are those kind of blood-sucking things that you get? Stick to them like a leech and just kind of absorb all their energy and be accommodating with everybody. You need to be the person that everybody likes. And for that, you need to help out people when they get into trouble. If you know something and you see an intern that is having trouble with something, help them out. Never point out fingers in an internship. Never say, oh, it was their fault. Even if it was not your fault and people are kind of blaming you for something, just stay quiet, you know? Mm-hmm. That's, I think, the two biggest pieces of advice I can give for anybody doing their internship. And of course, absorb, learn, and learn. It's going to be tough because it's badly paid. You're going to be living in kind of bad apartment situations, you know, with bad roommates, that kind of stuff. But, you know, if I hadn't put in all that hard work in that internship and strike up that conversation with the partner, and if, you know, this is both a personal rapport and also them looking at my work in the office, he would have never accepted to go kind of lecture in my university. And then, I mean, I'm very grateful for David. I owe a lot for my career to David.
So talking about OMA, I think we're all very, very intrigued to know how was your experience at OMA, the overall experience about the work, the environment. So how was it?
No, look, I mean, it was a dream come true for me. The first time I heard of OMA was in school. I had a design studio professor from year 2 tell me that, he said he saw some of my drawings. Like, these drawings look a lot like what the early Rem Koolhaas drawings would look like. I'm like, who? Year 2. And then I started looking into it. And that's the first time that kind of Rem came into my sphere. So ending up, I never thought I would be working at OMA 1. I never thought I would get to visit Hong Kong 2. When I got the acceptance letter finally and the offering from Dave and all this, I couldn't believe it, of course, but I freaked out. I was as freaked out as I was on that flight going to Holland. I was 3 times freaked out going to Hong Kong, because I was like, these architects are going to be way better than me, and they're going to sniff me out, and they're going to realize that I'm not good enough to be amongst these junior architects. So I started taking Rhino classes before I went into OMA, and we can get into that a little bit if you want. But I think we need to talk about the first day at OMA. First day of OMA was kind of a great experience. So you need to understand the Hong Kong office was a new office for OMA. At that time, the main office was still Rotterdam with New York. And the newest office was Beijing, and they were starting something in Dubai, This is 2009. So the first part of 2000, it was all about the Middle Eastern projects. And Dubai was like, the Death Star and all these projects that were taking hold over there. But it was also kind of at the crescendo of the construction of CCTV. CCTV in Beijing required the office of OMA to be there. And if you remember, there had been the CCTV fire, which was monumental thing in the office because it was a big deal. I mean, people could not pick up the phones because there were reporters calling into the office. And so phones were disconnected because you couldn't let any person speak for OMA who just happened to answer the phone, right? So, okay. So that's the environment I'm going in. The new office in Hong Kong was 13 people, me being one of the 13. And it started by renting a little cubicle space out of the McKinsey office, who is a very large kind of consulting firm. So we were the weird guys out there because everybody there dressed in suits and were like very courteous and very kind of nice looking. And we were all in jeans and hadn't slept the night before with like messy hair, right? So you can tell from the McKinsey office who was from McKinsey, who was the weird architects in the corner. And the reason we got that space was because OMA uses McKinsey a lot in their master plans as a consultant to figure out numbers and finances and kind of stuff for the planning of the urban plan. So I get this address, I land, and I head directly into the office with my bags and stuff. And so I get in there, and it's this room that is a bit larger than my cubicle here. And I meet the other architect. I meet my direct boss, David Genoten, the let's say Asia partner at the time. Now he's managing partner. And everything's great. I leave my bags off to one side, and we're waiting for Rem. We're gonna have a meeting with Rem to discuss Taipei Performing Arts Center, which is a project I came in to work in. So after an hour or so of waiting for Rem, I go to the bathroom. And so as I walk into the bathroom and I'm at the stall at the urinal, a tall figure walks in behind me at that precise kind of half second. And, I'm fairly short. I'm 176 and 167. I got that the other way around. And Rem is very tall. He's almost 2 meters. And so I'm at the urinal and I turn around and I see Rem's bald head, and he turns around and sees me. And I'm like, I don't even say hello. I just like, uh-huh. And then I get out of there, wash my hands, immediately get into the office. And a minute behind me is coming in Rem. And when Rem walks in the door, David says, "Oh, Rem, this is a Mexican I was telling you that was going to join us on the team." And I look at Rem, and he must have known I was an architect because I was not wearing a suit, clearly. And I was probably dressed in black. And he looks at me, and we're like, we're not going to say anything. We just met in the bathroom. Like, hi, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Hi, yeah, okay. So I met Rem in the bathroom. Now, that first day preceded a 6-hour meeting to go over all the problems in the design of the Taipei Performing Arts Center. At that time, what had happened was that we had won the competition, and we were looking at the drawings to figure out all the stuff that we needed to fix from the competition, stuff that didn't work, structural, MEP, concept, theater sizes. We had a great idea during the competition. I was not involved in this idea, but the team had this great idea during the competition. There was a square meter total size that the building could be. And at the end, in the competition team done in Rotterdam, that team came over to Hong Kong, who I got integrated with, decided that because we were about 10% extra on square meters, that we should just grab all the plans and scale them 90%. So of course, mathematically that works, but then you get a chair that is like 10% too small for the theater. So we needed to fix all this stuff, right? Which was insane. So 6-hour-long meeting with Rem in a table that is no bigger than 90 centimeters in the middle of this tiny cubicle with 4 other guys from the team. And after that, we had to then process all that meeting into diagrams and meeting minutes and organize work. So I left that day at 5 a.m. in the morning. That was my first day at OMA.
That is quite a first day.
Yeah, I mean, it checks what you would expect, right? What else could it have been? And the experience of OMA was amazing. I mean, it's a chunk of my life, 5 years. I got there when I was about, I forget exactly the years, but it must have been 24, 25 to 30, basically. That's an important part of your life.
Yeah.
I went through junior architect to senior architect to business manager. I got to lead a design team. I got to see projects go on construction, the Taipei Performing Arts Center. I get to do interior design from concept to build out to then that project being demolished, which was insane. That's the Edouard Maline Gallery, and it had nothing to do with us. Basically, the rent for the space got too expensive, so that whole thing got torn down, reinstated, and then he moved to a new place. And I remember working with an Indian guy, Ravi Kamisetti, and Ravi was telling me when I was working on that gallery, and I also did a dental practice, a couple interior designs in Hong Kong. And I said, he told me, Viviano, it's amazing. I've been working in OMA for 10 years. Ravi is like a hardcore guy there. And I've never had a project go on to site. I've never built anything. And the reason was because he was always in competitions. And, out of 50 competitions, 2 hit. And then out of those 2 that hit, maybe 1 gets built, and it might take a few years. So it was just an overall amazing experience. And you have to also counter this that we had a lot of involvement with Rem. We called it Rem Week. Rem would visit Hong Kong once a month. And we need to talk about Rem faxes, which is, I mean, I don't know if you ever sent a fax in your life, but when I was there, we still would send faxes, and there's a reason for that. David and I got along great. I mean, he's really a friend, and he was my boss. So that's insane. OMA pays a decent salary as long as you get upper in the ranks. And the bottom, it's just like any other firm, like Herzog de Meuron or Saha. You're going to get what you need to survive. It's not good pay. It's what you need to survive. But as you get older, your hours go down because you can hand off responsibilities to other people. And it's a good quality of life. And then I got the ability to move laterally and learn about the business of it, because I'm like, okay, one thing that I think is different from my personal experience to others is that I had a clear perspective of what I wanted to do after OMA. Some people go to OMA and that's their end of the story. They have no idea what to do except to be at OMA. They don't know if they want to kind of grow old and retire from OMA. They don't know if they want to become a partner. They don't know if they want to go back home, and then what are they going to do with their OMA experience? I knew I wanted to set up an office, and I knew I wanted to have work that was internationally recognized at some point. And so when I saw that there was a void of the business side, I saw that as an amazing opportunity to learn about contracts and fees and pitching OMA's work to clients. And so I moved into that. And a lot of people, it was weird because a lot of people, when I did that, they started looking at you like, oh, now you're part of the bosses. You're not part of the crew anymore, who are the architects and the cool guys that we gather at bars and kind of moan about work and like so-and-so and like talk about design. But it was absolutely, completely not that. It was just about, no, I want to have my own office. And if I can learn how OMA handles their office, what else, what's better than that, you know?
Yeah, this was one of the advice that one of my professors had given me. Is so one of my professors also had his own studio. So I had done a summer internship with him, and he had told me, when you're in a studio, there are things that you already know how to do. Like if you're really good at designing, if you're really good at something, there are, and the office will use you for those skills. But you are also, especially in internships, you're also there to learn and understand what you do not know. So try and do things that you do not know, so that you can learn more about how the whole office works.
More stuff about the OMA experience that I think is not only kind of a good story, it's also kind of very fruitful as advice and kind of mind opening, is the intern ability to design and the junior architect ability to design and have a say in the design. In an office like OMA is legit. I'm a junior architect. This means I've got like 2 years experience, let's say, out of graduation. And I'm in charge of the facades of the Taipei Performing Arts Center. Now it's got 5 types of facades, and it's, if you've seen the building, what it is, it's 3 theaters. There's 2 kind of orthogonal shaped, 1 box, 1 kind of more like skewed box, and a sphere plugged into a metal glass cube. This glass cube is corrugated. It's the same glass that was used in the Casa de Música in Porto. And the reason why it's corrugated is because when you corrugate it, it stands by itself and it doesn't need so many metal brackings and kind of fixing systems. So it's very complex facade systems, and I had never done a facade. So companies like OMA are okay with handing off these gigantic responsibilities to juniors and interns, because they know that their hiring pool, these portfolios that came in, they're hiring from the best of the best. Okay. So that process is really important. And when a bad intern comes in, or a bad junior, and I can tell you this for a fact, when a bad director or senior comes in, they're sniffed out like that, and the system just eats them up, and you don't last more than 6 months. It's impossible. So the design of the joints for these facades was really a thing, because in the competition, we wanted to have it smooth. So it was 1 concrete ball with no joints and 2 boxes with no joints. 1 was metal. And the idea behind the metal was like, well, if Apple made the MacBook Pro seamless in 1 single piece of metal, surely we can do a building that is seamless with 1 piece of metal. Of course, that was not possible. And for 2 years, I suffered with this, where everybody wanted no joints. And the engineers I was consulting with, they were like, Viviano, it's impossible. Look, it's an earthquake zone, and you've got days where it goes from 10 degrees to 30 degrees in the same day. Expansion joints, like metal moves. You need joints. And I had to come up with all these designs. So at some point there was a breaking point, and I managed to get the team on board with the idea like, okay, we need joints. We just need to design the joints. And I made 9 models, and I cladded on top of them different concepts of how to do the joints. And we had a Rem week. So we need to talk about Rem faxes. So Rem week, everybody prepares their projects. So maybe in Hong Kong, we were looking at 6 projects, so 6 teams. And everybody gets meetings with Rem to discuss everything. And, you know, when it gets to me, we're discussing facades. So I had my 9 models and my booklet of everything I was going to show him and discuss about what's in progress, what we need feedback, what we need input, blah, 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 blah. So we get to the facade, and Rem is mad because it's okay. It's been 1 month and I've seen no advances on the facade. I'm totally kept in the dark, and he's really mad about this. And the reason he's kept in the dark was because we've been sending him Rem faxes and he has not had time to read them. The Rem fax, what it was, is the team, these booklets, send them off by the project leader. So everybody puts together their topic. So the structure guy and the girl who's dealing at different kind of urbanism topics, me, facade, all that compiles into a book that gets to like 50, 60 pages and gets faxed off to him. And he needs to read it. And I have the returns where he sketches on it, and then he would scan it back and fax it back to us. That's how it was up until 2013, more or less. The reason why it was a fax is because he's always traveling all over the world. So he doesn't know laptop, email. No, he had a kind of those calculator phones, the flip phones. He didn't have a smartphone. When I left, he got a Samsung Galaxy. That was in 2014. So a fax would be sent to the hotel lobby where he was staying, and the lobby of the hotel would print it out for him. Now, the difficult part about the fax is that it's all black and white. So there's no, like, I do this diagram where like, oh, pink means this and yellow means like black and white. So it was really hard. And if he got a fax and he responded and he didn't respond to your topic, you're falling behind now. And that's what had happened to the facade. So I had my models ready. We had many fights in the team about the joints, and I was going to present them. And so I'm like, okay, Rem, here are the models. This is one option. This is another option. This is another option. And he's like, okay, which is your preferred option? And I was like, my preferred option is this one. And he's like, okay, within that option, how would you do it? That's the amount of responsibility that you get as a junior architect in one of these kind of companies. But of course, how we got to that point about all these discussions about the joinery and the design of it, at one point in a previous meeting, Rem sat down with me and he said, okay, Viviano, yes, we are going to design with joints. Yes, we need to come up with a design for it. But I want you to do this. Do you know the LA Prada store from OMA? I'm like, yes. And if you look up the design, you'll see it. It's one huge kind of square facade, rectangular facade. He says, do you know that that's one single piece of aluminum? Aluminium, as a European would say it. And I said, no. He says, that's one single piece. So I want you to talk to the people that were involved in the design and construction of that. And that's our smallest piece we're going to deal with. So I want gigantic pieces, and then just put that onto the sphere and figure out how to collide it based on that. So that design that I had come up with, the Goldilocks thing, was made of huge pieces like that. And then it took me about 6 months of researching, talking to the engineers, talking to people that used to work at OMA, that worked on that project that was old now, to figure out how we did that back there to evolve it and apply it to Taipei. But that was given to me, to a guy who, you know, had 2 years experience, was 23.
Yeah, that is what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this sort of responsibility ever being given to such a junior architect. I think that is, it fits your first day, like how that started and how it's going on. I think it fits.
I think you need to be able to put yourself in the position where you present yourself and your work so that people can trust you. If people can trust you, they'll give you all the responsibility and they'll say, hey, you know what? Even if you mess up, I trust you with this because I know that you're going to be on top of it, even if things go wrong. And that's what really you want from a boss. You want a person that trusts you and that is willing to go on this journey where like, hey, you're the boss and you don't have time to do this work. Let me figure it out, but understand that I'm going to have a hard time getting into it, but I'll do my best. And I think that's a great kind of environment to be in.
Obviously, all firms evolve over the years as well. Does Rem, I mean, now, is he more technologically savvy, let's say?
Like use more technology?
No. I mean, Rem doesn't use a laptop except for writing. But I would say this, he's incredibly involved. You know, Rem is in his middle 70s right now. I think he's around 75. I saw in 2012, Rem pull an all-nighter at the office together with the team, working on the book submission for the West Kowloon Cultural District Master Plan, which was a competition between OMA, Foster, Rocco Yim, who's a Hong Kong architect, and there was somebody else. I forget who was the other person. He left at 4 a.m. to take a shower, came back at 6 a.m. and left at 11 a.m. I mean, that's
crazy.
Now, that kind of involvement is not in all of the projects, that's for sure. But on many, that's how involved it is. And in Taipei Performing Arts Center, I mean, I saw bathroom tiling design with him on the table. That's how involved he got. But he doesn't use a laptop for anything except for Word and sending emails.
And I mean, in the office, do you also discuss 3D models like on the screen, or it has to be a physical model in his hand?
It's a printout and a physical model. It's very, at least up until December 2014, which is when I left, you would not bring a laptop to show anything. Physical model or printouts. Actually, we would talk about how much we would print. It was really insane, expensive thing, but yeah. We had many printers and they were going all the time.
Yeah, this was something a lot of our professors used to do as well. And I mean, a lot of architects who are from an older generation, they don't look at, like, even they used to come in for our jury. Sometimes they used to say, why are we wasting so much paper? We can project the whole thing and you could see our models. And like, no, get a physical model for us to see, get it on paper, and then we'll have a look at it.
Well, Rem will sketch on your printouts. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
There was a rumor, I never knew who this person was or if this is true or not. So bear in mind, it's a rumor that there was a guy fired from the Rotterdam office because he was grabbing printouts that were sketched on by Rem and selling them to architecture students.
Oh.
But that could be a fireable offense if anybody's like thinking of doing that. Tell me a little bit about your journey through the firm, like entering as a junior architect to becoming a senior architect.
Okay, so the jumps between the thresholds, and let's just go over this because it's important. Most design studios of the caliber of OMA have the similar hierarchy, and that is intern, junior, architect, or junior architect, architect, senior, and then you go into associate and partner. And the differences there are the same ones that I use to apply to my studio, which fall into more or less this category. Basically, an intern is somebody that has not graduated yet. Although it is common to see in many of these studios, interns that have masters already.
Yes, yeah.
Why? Because, you know, in their life, they maybe decided that they needed this experience and they hadn't had it before in their lifetime. And so they're like, okay, yes, I have a master's degree, but if I can get an internship in OMA, I'm going to do it, even if it's for internship money. That's upon who's deciding. And many times they would see like, look, you're overqualified for this position. Are you sure you want to take it? And they're like, it's up to you, you know? But the way it breaks down is like that. So intern is a person that has not graduated yet, could be in their year out experience. That's the perfect intern. They're going to go back to school. A junior architect has recently graduated and it's between 0 to 4 years of a good working experience. Yeah. And they're strong in concept and they can make models. They know about 3D printing. They know about sanding, all these kind of things, right? Now, the difference between a junior architect and an architect is communication and collaboration and coordination with consultants. That is a huge leap in your architectural education as to not academic education, as to becoming an architect. Your ability to have a design, understand what you don't know about it, and then understanding and clearly identifying those things and asking those questions to the right people, the engineers and whoever's consulting on that, being able to manage communications with them, emails, video conferencing, all that, send them the information they need so that they can properly respond to you, analyzing their response to see what works for the project. And we're like, because it's always about pushing the consultants, and they're like, no, you know, of course the AC consultant is going to want to send their ducts right through the middle, but it's going to completely ruin your interior space. So you're going to go like, look, yeah, this works great, but it ruins the space. How can we, that thing, that pushing consultants, analyzing the responses, integrating that to the project and maybe making the development of the project move forward, that is, I think, the jump between junior and architect. Now, that jump was highly, highly contested at OMA. Everybody wanted to go to junior to architect because a throng of interns come in every year and they just stay 6 months and it's like a conveyor belt of fresh meat.
Yeah.
The pick of the litter, the best interns stay as junior architects. Yeah. And then it's a massive fight to see who becomes architect, because once you're an architect, it means you're going to be there for a couple of years. Juniors are going to be there 6 to 12 months. That's it.
Okay.
Also, because physically you cannot take the junior position very long, you know, because you want to have a life. You hopefully want to meet a partner for your life to spend with, and you want to live a happy and healthy life. And 4 years as a junior is not going to produce that. So the architect to senior is very contested. And then senior, the difference between the architect and the senior is a person that can organize a team, you know, and send work and say, okay, you are going to do the model, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And he keeps schedules so the project is on time. and organizes a presentation so that Rem can look at it. So somebody needs to coordinate and make sure that everything is ready for Rem to look at it. Because if it's a half put together presentation, Rem's going to get really mad and the project is going nowhere in development. That's the difference with the senior. Now, associate and partner, it's all about how the hierarchy looks at you. Do they want you to stay or not? Because technically an associate has a stake in the company, a small stake in the company, but it has a stake. And the partner owns part of the company. So that really is like, do you want to become not part of the family, but do you want to be one of the members of the family?
So after becoming a senior architect, you became a business manager at the firm. So when you change your position from a senior architect to a business manager, what does that change entail?
Okay, so this is interesting. There was a guy that was hired as a business developer. And so you've got business development and you've got business development management as well. And nobody in the office thought that he was doing a good job. I'm sure he was doing a decent job. He stayed there for a year and then he left by his own accord to do some writing and publish a book on some investigation that he was doing in the continent of Africa. Forget which country in Africa. And they were hiring this person and this position. And actually I submitted the CV of a friend who I thought would be great for the job. And he came in for the interview and I sat in the interview and he did a good job, but he wanted too much money. And so they didn't hire him. And I said, you know what? I can do this. I can do way better than the previous guy, that's for sure. And it's a great learning experience. So I raised my hand and my boss, David, said, really, you want to do this? And he signed me that day. He changed me the contract that same day. He's like, yeah, fantastic. I'll teach you everything you need to know. And it was an amazing learning experience from legal contracts, like how the word needs to be placed, what kind of legal clauses are very dangerous for architects, what are very necessary for architects. An amazing experience hand in hand with our lawyers. We had in-house lawyers. Bear in mind that we had to have bilingual contracts in English and Chinese for all our clients. So we had to sometimes figure out if the translations were correct or not. It was interesting. But there's a very public side of business development, which is going out there and pitching. And pitching can be in the form of, hey, we have a meet and greet with a potential client. Let's go and present our work. Or there's a conference and David can go, can you go and give the conference? And I'll give the lecture. I like talking, as you can tell. And that part I loved. And then the other parts, that's legal, that's kind of public business development. And then you've got the financial part, which this is where the management spreads, I guess. Because one part is like coming up with the fees for OMA. How much are we going to charge? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We've got this competition. Are we going to join it? How much is it going to pay? Or we've got this commission. How much are we going to charge for this commission? Understanding how OMA figured that out was an incredible learning. That's a master's in itself. Yeah. Being an OMA in design was a master's, but then being an OMA in the business side was another master's. And then the managing side is like, okay, well, this project paid this much, so we can allocate this many resources. And when I say resources, I mean this big of a team with these many expenses. So they can travel to site or not, or they can do this kind of modeling. So, because we had presentation models were made by professional companies and they cost a lot of money. Yeah. So figuring out the expense for each project and then understanding when a project goes in red digits, but it's a worthwhile project for the office, or a project that is great, but suddenly it stopped because the client had a financial problem, or a great project, but the client is just not paying on time, all these things. Then we're like, okay, well, let's put that team to work on this project and let's put that team on holiday and we're going to have to fire somebody. That kind of decisions go in the management side. And it's part of business development. So, it was incredible. And like I said before, a lot of the designers, because they had such a bad image of the guy who was doing that before as well, I think were very surprised. And it was funny because the new recruits that met me when I was the business development guy and had no idea that I was actually also an architect, were surprised when I was in meetings talking about design. And they're like, Viviano, I had no idea that you... Like, yeah, dude, I was like a junior and an architect and a senior before this. So it was a great experience and it really helped me with the setting up of my office.
I also wanted to know, so once you get into the job of a business manager, do you tend to move away from the design aspect of the projects?
Inevitably, because you have less hours in your day, and design requires so many hours, but also setting up fees and legal stuff require you for your mind to be very sharp. I mean, you cannot have an error in a number in Excel sheet or an error in a contract. And for that, you cannot be reviewing contracts at 4 a.m. in the morning because you're going to have some mistakes. Whereas, drawing, it's, you've been there when you have a model and you kind of flip it like that 400 times at 2 a.m. That's doable. But numbers and legal jargon at 2 a.m., not required, not recommended.
You've had loads of meetings with Rem. You've traveled with him as well, especially in China. So tell us about, just tell us more about him. Like, what is it like to work with him, discuss things with him?
Yeah, a lot of it has been talked about Rem, of course. And like, as they say, probably mostly what you heard is true and also not true. So another great experience with OMA, which one of the nicest experience actually with OMA was, we were in a meeting with Rem discussing the Taipei Performing Arts Center. And in this table, it was like 6 of us in the team plus Rem. And he kept referencing Casa de Música. Like the railings, like in Casa de Música, but let's do this. The facade, like in Casa de Música, but now let's do it like this. Like Casa de Música, over and over again. And at some point, Rem turned to the table and looked at us and said, okay, well, who's been to Casa de Música? And we all looked at each other and we're like, we haven't been to Casa de Música. Because if you go to Portugal, you go to Lisbon first, and Porto's kind of out of the way, and also the building hasn't been there for a very long time, so it's hard to get people to get there. And he looked at us and he went like, wow, such disdain. He was like emotionally distressed. And the next week, he took the whole team to Casa de Música in Porto. So we flew there and we had a personal tour with Rem of the whole building. It was an amazing experience. And it was super quick, like literally landed in the morning, toured the whole day into the building, bottom, gantries, I got in between the facades, rooftop, amazing. And then we left. And it was very surreal. At the entrance, I had with me all the plans of Casa de Música. I had all the plans for the facade. So I can ask the appropriate question because I was facade guy, right? So at the entrance in the lobby, he looks at me and says, do you understand the concept for Casa de Música? And he's like, I didn't answer because I was afraid of getting it wrong. I'm like, okay, I think so. And he grabs my plans, puts it on the back, and sketches the concept for Casa de Música, where he shows you, look, the main building is a theater. And if you kind of crash the surrounding ancillary volumes in a kind of haphazard way and just wrap that around, that's the end result of the facade. And so I have that as a memory in my office right here next to me. And I remember traveling with him also to a competition in Shanghai. And we were landing in the airport and he looks at me and says, Viviano, you see those guys over there? I'm like, yeah. Do you think they're architects? They look like architects. Thinking to try to figure out what other teams were participating in this competition. And he has this knack that he'll buy 30 magazines at the airport shops and go like that and then leave them. And I had heard about that before, but I didn't think it was true. And I turned around to David, because it's Rem, David, me, and a couple other people in the team. And I'm like, oh, this is legit. This is not a rumor. He does this. And he leaves them everywhere. It's like, can I take them? Yeah, sure, take them. Like 80% of them were in Chinese. He just goes through material. He wants to absorb all these kind of things. It's really incredible.
Let's come towards the end of your time at OMA, and then you came back to Mexico to start mass operations. So tell us about that. So when did you finally decide that it was time to go back, and tell us a little bit about your practice as well.
It was a really hard decision. I didn't take this lightly because you have to consider I am in one of the most interesting cities in the world. I've got great friends. I've got a decent salary. My boss is a dear friend. And it's one of the most interesting studios in the world for design. And I want to leave. Yeah. I mean, I was not very sure, but I said this was always the goal. The goal was to start your own office. You got to do this. Certain administrative things changed in the Hong Kong office. David, as partner, went from being Asia partner, in charge of all the Asia projects, to being managing partner. So he had to go back to Holland, and he said, "Come back with me." And I said, I already worked in Holland, but I'm like, this is not the right time to go back to where I've already been. I think this is time for me to start on my own. And he said, "That's the best thing you can do. And if I can help you with anything, I'm here for you." So that's what you want to hear from a boss. You want a boss that if you want to leave, he says, we're going to miss you, but this is the right thing for you. So he's become a very important mentor for me. And so I set off, and I started, the idea was to be in Hong Kong and Mexico at the same time. Architecture is very, very slow. It takes a long time for a project to come in and to become a real project, and then to go onto site, and then to get finalized. It's 4 years. If you think about that, that's a huge chunk of time. Yeah. Interior design is very quick, and it's actually very well paid. Hong Kong has tons of interior design. So I focused on that, and through contacts, I started getting a couple of interior design projects. The Raja Lux RL showroom was one of them. And then a couple of interior designs, and they got well published, and some of them got a couple of residential interior designs, and they got well published, and some of them actually got some awards. And so that gave me some financial stability, actually, because they're well paid for, enough to invest that money in traveling. And so I would go back and forth to Mexico and Hong Kong, sometimes twice in a month, which is a long commute. And I started developing and doing business development in Mexico. And my clients in Mexico, I would say, "Hey, I'm here. Here's my office. I'm here all the time." And my clients in Hong Kong, I would tell them, "Hey, I'm here. Here's my office all the time." And I would just put my money into the travel. Because normally what you do with the international clients is you build them for your travels. So massoperations started forming, and I started teaching as well, which I had started teaching at the end of my OMA tenure, let's say. And that also gave me some financial backing. And also it hones your abilities to present, to speak about design. And I love it. It's actually a passion for me to teach. I think I'm decent at it. So all that was in the mix, going back and forth. Interior projects finished in 3-4 months, quick, one after the other, some getting published, some getting awards. And then the architecture project started in Mexico. So I had a co-working space in Hong Kong, and I started building this office here. Building, it means finding the space, renting it out, and then fixing it up, because it was a mess. Because if you want to get a cheap rent, you need to pay for a place that is in terrible shape. And developing the clients, and that's how these buildings came about. And that's the first startings of massoperations.
One thing more that I wanted to discuss was your master's. So you got a master's from SIAC, and you graduated just last year. So why did you feel you needed to do the master's, especially 10 years into the field, and what value did it actually add?
Yeah, I mean, looking back at it, it seems very rational. Even though if you look at it coldly in the CV, you're like, wait a minute, how, why? You graduated in 2008, and then in 2018, you do a master's. It was the best decision I could have made. It was an expensive decision. And this is a caveat for all those people out there, students that are thinking about doing their master's. If you remember the discussion going to OMA, I had asked David for a letter of recommendation to go to Harvard and Columbia, and then decided to go to OMA. So I missed out on that master's thing. Now the master's, it should be about what you learn, but it's also about who you meet. It's about your networking. That's really important. And that's professors, that's tutors, and that's colleagues. So I missed out on that. And, in the working environment, the job, if you have a master's, you get paid a little bit more in certain type of companies because, check mark that kind of thing, which has nothing to do with what you learned, because you could have a master's in business. They don't care. Yeah. You need to get paid more for your master's. It's a mafia. That's what it is. It's a racket. But so like I said, I had started teaching, and I really started enjoying a lot of teaching. And I saw that students would respond to me, because deans would come up to me and like, "Hey, Viviano, students are saying this and this and this. I mean, this is good. What we're doing here is good." And so I got into more and more of the art of teaching, which is pedagogy, right? And I thought, well, if I could get more legitimate into this, because I fell into teaching because I took what I learned at OMA and brought that into the classroom. And in Hong Kong, if you said you were OMA, they're like, come in here, please teach, right? In other parts of the world, in Mexico, not everybody knows what OMA is. So it's different. And so, okay, if I want to go back and be legitimate in any given point in time, if I want to teach at Harvard, I want the ability to be able to apply. If I get hired or not at Harvard, that's another thing. But just to have the credentials to be able to apply, I need that master's. And throughout my tenure at OMA and starting my practice up until that point, 2018. So OMA 2009, leave 2014, start my practice, and then master's in 2018. During that period, I had different interests. And I would say, like, if I would do a master's, what would I do it in? And first off, when I had just graduated, it would be like, oh, advanced architectural designs. What Mariana did, the DRL, right? That would be, or the GSAP unit at Harvard. And then I went like, oh no, you know what? Urban planning with a good knowledge of real estate and financial data, smart cities. That was like my phase 2 of interest. And by this point, after starting my own office and being comfortable in a working environment of my own practice, I realized actually teaching, the history of teaching. And I saw SCI-Arc came up with this new program called the EDGE program, which has 4 different masters, and they're 1 year long, 2 semesters plus 1 summer. I'm like, that's perfect, because I can do that while leaving my office, going from Monterrey, Mexico to California, to LA. So if you remember, I was traveling back and forth between Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And this traveling thing is very important in the design. Yeah. Because a lot of my designs got done in boats and airplanes, which is insane. So a cheap way to get to Monterrey, which is a second tier city in Mexico, it's the second most important, but you know, all flights go to Mexico City, not to Monterrey, is to go through LA. It's a cheap way to go to Hong Kong and to Monterrey through LA. I'm like, perfect. I'll take a long layover and I'll go visit SCI-Arc. So I did that. And I recommend this for anybody who has the financial ability to do it, to do this if you're applying to a master's. And I met the deans and I told them, I'm interested in this master's. I might be applying. So they got to know me and they said, well, what's the deal? I'm like, oh, I'm on my way to Hong Kong. I have an office over there and I have my office in Mexico. I must have sounded like a real hot shot. They didn't know that I was sleeping on trains and low budget airlines, but you need to look the part, sell yourself.
Yeah.
Always, obviously with modesty, right? But enact what you want to become, I guess I would say. So I got a good relationship with another David there, which is David Rue, spelled R-U-Y, but it's Rue. It's a weird thing. And so I went on my business back to Hong Kong to continue on site of an interior design. And I started my application process. And actually, there's a scholarship awarded to 1 Mexican architect per year. It's called the Beca Scholarship. And I said, okay, now figure this, Rishab. I'm teaching in Hong Kong, teaching in Mexico, and I have a practice in both sides. This is 2017, 2018. And I'm applying for this master's. I think I'm crazy. And I said, okay, let's do this. If I get that scholarship, I'm doing it. And if I don't get it, okay, well, we'll see what happens next year. And I got it. And there was like an oh shit moment. Like, okay, now I need to do this.
Yeah.
And you have my portfolio first for the application to SCI-Arc. And the essay says, I am applying to SCI-Arc because I'm scared of it. Because I don't know about Grasshopper. I don't know about all the technological stuff that I saw, of advanced convoluted neural networks and what they use to design. And I'm like, okay, this is my methodology for the last decade. Put yourself in the scariest position. Challenge yourself. I was very scared going to Holland. I was very scared going to OMA. I was very scared leaving OMA. This was the next scary thing. And the program is called Design, Theory, and Pedagogy. And it's made for architects that want to have their own practice and teach. I'm like, okay, that's exactly what I'm doing. It's perfect. And it was amazing. I got to learn about the first architecture program in education ever, 1867 in the States. I got to learn about the French architects doing the academy in the 1600s of Beaux-Arts, Blondel. I mean, I started learning French to be able to research these guys because a lot of it is only published in French. and they're old books from the 1600s. So they're published as an image. You can't do the kind of translation that Google does. It was really, and I was comparing, here's the French translation to English, and here's the Spanish French translation to Spanish. And they mean different things, like a real academic thing. I had become a snob in a way. And I was teaching in Sayark.
In the midst of everything that's going on, you're learning a new language now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
It is, but you need to be fascinated by these things. And the only way to be fascinated by the things is to have like this immense appetite and curiosity for things. And so I'm doing video conferencing with my office from Hong Kong, from LA, and then visiting. And I'm doing video conferencing with the contractors in Hong Kong. It was an insane period. And right now I'm just recovering from that because I graduated September 2019. And it was a moment of like, back to normal. I stopped the Hong Kong office during the master's because I couldn't do that for an extended period of time. And, things went a little bit of normal, and I'm still in recovery mode after that. Sayark was an amazing experience. I would recommend anybody who's interested to look into it. It's very expensive, so get your finances in order.
One of my friends is actually studying there right now. He started last year, and it is quite expensive, the whole program. Plus living in LA itself is expensive.
I mean, the program is expensive, but you can get scholarships for those things. But living in LA is extraordinarily expensive. And one thing that I didn't plan correctly was that the Mexican peso devaluated 30% the year I was there. So I was spending dollars to get my food and my apartment, and it was getting constantly more and more expensive. I didn't counter for that. So yeah, but that means that I'm fully accredited professor, instructor. Professor is when you get your PhD. And during COVID, teaching, because I'm teaching now at the public and at the private universities here, teaching has allowed me to have a steady income enough that I've managed to keep the entirety of my team. We're 5 here. I could have very easily have let go of 3. And I don't want to do that because you train these people, they become part of your family, you trust them with your life. And, if you can go into your savings to just keep them on board, you should do that. And without the payment of the university, I wouldn't be able to do it. But on top of that, I love it. I give all my students these bracelets at the beginning of class, which is called Cátedra Más, and they wear them. They don't have to, but they wear them. At the end of the semester, I show them the movie Karate Kid. Now, I don't know how old you are, Rishabh, and I don't know if you saw Karate Kid, the original one. But Mr. Miyagi gives Daniel-san a headband with like a bonsai. And he says, this is my symbol of my responsibility of teaching you. But if you take it, that's your responsibility of listening to what I'm saying and what I say. And that's the bracelet. So it's great. And at the end of the semester, like, whoa, I've seen students now 2 years after class still wearing them, which it makes me want to cry.
Actually pretty cool. Are you planning on doing a PhD after as well?
I've just started thinking about it this last month for very weird reasons. One, because I'm fascinated by this Blondel guy in France, because there's very little research outside of France around him. And it's very complicated because there was 3 JF Blondels, and I'm only talking about one. That's because Jacques-François Blondel and kind of the other variations, and they all lived in the same 100-year period. But also if you do your PhD, you're at the top echelon and you get some benefits from that. But, it's in the cards. We'll see.
All right. So let's come to our final question, Viviano. What advice would you give to young students out there?
Well, is that an advice for this period of time that we're living in, or are we talking about a general advice?
I think now let's specify to this period of time that we're living in, because I think right now we're living through quite an event that's going on in the world.
Yeah. So pandemic time, COVID-19. So what would I tell students right now? I get applications through our website every week of students, and I respond to most of them with this piece of advice that I'm going to tell you guys. So if you're studying right now and looking for an internship, it's it's probably not that bad of a thing, because now you can apply to internships in many countries without having to move there. So let's look at the positive things, right? So this visa issue is not an issue anymore because you're going to be working from home. How long will that last? We'll see. Which companies are willing to have their people that far away? Time zones is a limitation to an extent, et cetera, et cetera. But that's actually an interesting point. Now, that's for just internships, which is you're not really looking to earn money. If you've graduated in 2019 and 2020, and you're looking for a job where you're like, okay, I need to start kind of paying my own rent. I need to start paying my medical insurance, you know, kind of real, you're becoming a real adult right now. It's a tough time because there's not many jobs out there. So I would say to that person, the people that fall in that category, is like, if you have the financial ability to, yes, keep searching for a job, and I hope you find it. But if you find yourself with free time, invest in your application, in your portfolio, graphic design skills, storytelling skills. I mean, I've taken classes online for script writing, like people who learn how to write a movie. If you can write a movie, you can write the story for a building. Invest in yourself. Go back to the projects that you designed and rethink them and polish them. Go back to those competitions that you participated in and didn't finish, and finish them. Yeah. So don't have wasted free time. If there's anything sad in life, is wasted free time. Enjoy free time. Yeah. Go to the beach and read and all that. That's great, but don't waste it. If you don't necessarily need to find a working position right now financially, it's a great moment to go into competitions. Do that for sure. It's an experience. Because you learn to see from doing competition, not only do you learn about your own design through the process of designing it, but then you get to see which projects were awarded and for what reasons. So you live through that drama, and you live through the waiting to see what the jury says, especially if you've never been in a competition before. You probably need to do 20 competitions before you win one, for sure. Yeah. And it's a tough process, and it's going to give you, you know what a callus is? Like this rubbing against your hand that forms a hard piece of skin. Mm-hmm. Your brain needs to develop these calluses to deal with the negative aspects of losing competitions. You just need to build up that strength, and you need to know that it's part of life, and it's going to happen many times. And it's going to happen with selected architects to join exhibitions in museums, and you're not going to be selected. It's going to be for people being published, and you're not going to be published. You need to build up your strength against that. Yeah. So great time to go into competitions. I would not invest in a master's degree right now. The academic world is trying to figure out how this is going to change, and it's going to change forever. So we're going to go back in 3 years to a hybrid system of both online and presential based courses, and they're going to be valued differently. You having the professor in front of you is going to be valued way differently. The sizes of classes are probably going to change. And I'm talking to you from inside the academic world. I mean, this is discussions that I'm hearing already. So if you're in a bachelor, finish it. You have to finish your bachelor. Yeah. If you're about to enter a bachelor, enter your bachelor. It's a 4-year, 5-year thing. You know, it's a long way. It's a long race. But deciding to go into a master's degree right now, that's where I would say like, oh, maybe think about it twice. And if you want to start your own practice, go for it. There's never a better time to start a business than in the middle of a crisis.
But, well, that is, I think, quite an advice for
a lot of I think it covers almost all of who my audience is. Thank you, Viviano. Thank you. This was such an amazing conversation. I got to learn so much. I don't even work as an architect anymore, but I got to learn so much from this conversation, and getting insights, not just into, obviously getting insight into your work was amazing. Getting insight into OMA was amazing. Getting some insight into Rem Koolhaas and how he is, that was, I think, cherry on top of the cake. And thank you so much for taking out the time to do this interview.
No, I mean, for you, for investing the time in reading into my messages and all the stuff that I sent you. I hope I didn't overload you with all this stuff, because I had to come up with images for each one of the questions because they were really good. And I'm like super appreciative of being able to kind of have this discussion with you. And I hope that it is helpful for all your audience, because I know that you have a big audience. And I want to thank you also for what you're doing. The reason I found you was because we started a philosophy podcast. This is an interesting thing. My students asked me and another professor to do a podcast. Both professor and I have never met. We met online in a Zoom call with the first podcast, and it's gotten a really interesting kind of following. It's called Architecture and Philosophy, and we just talk about stuff like this, about profiles of architects and stuff like that. We did a Zaha one in the last one. It's all in Spanish, so don't bother looking it up.
But I was just going to send me a link.
Yeah, unfortunately. But I really enjoy it. And when we were doing that, I'm like, I need to find out who are the people that are talking about architecture in these ways. And that's how I found you. And I think that what you're doing for the student community is really important. So I'm sure it's very well appreciated.
Thank you, Viviano. Also, there people who are watching this video, down in the comments below, if you have any questions, advice, Viviano, if you could take out the time and help us out. Any comments, questions, advice you want to ask for, everything in the comments below, and Viviano would be here. And you could look up at the comments from time to time, and if you can just answer them, that'd be amazing.
I love questions, so please bring on all the questions you might have.
I
might regret that. I don't know. You have a lot of followers.
That is it, you guys. I hope you guys liked that video. I had an amazing time doing this discussion. I hope you had an amazing time listening to it. If there are any thoughts, questions, comments, in the comments below. Now, before you go, I also wanted to tell you that this was not all we discussed. We had a really long discussion. Obviously, this is an edited down version. There is actually bonus content from this video where Viviano also tells us his exact portfolio that got him into OMA. So let's look at some clips from that.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna do a course on portfolios out of this, because I had to dig up all my portfolios and see the evolution of them. For people who are watching, I sent Rishabh 5 portfolios throughout my career.
You'd also touched upon the fact that you had learned Rhino before going into OMA. So how much of a part did softwares play at the firm? And especially if somebody wants to go today as well.
When he gets to Hong Kong for Hong Kong Rem Week, at which at the end we're all going to go to Taipei to present to the mayor, he hates everything. He sees all the Rhino screenshots and it's like, everything is gray. It's horrible. The mayor's not going to like it. And so we really got churned out of that one.
So if you want to access this bonus content, you can do so through Patreon. So Patreon is a platform that lets you support your favorite creators by becoming a patron. So if you're interested in this video and many more amazing videos, do consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. And that was it, you guys. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, big fat thumbs up. Please share this video. Please subscribe to Blessedarch as well. I will see you guys soon with more such content. Bye-bye.